Got it. All right, does everybody see the Golden Gate Bridge?
Yes.
Okay, we are cooking with gas, as they say. Well, thank you for that introduction, and happy to be here. This talk here will be about birding in, Central California, basically from Mono Lake to Big Sur with Yosemite in between and so forth. And it was done, let's see, I think I have the dates here. Oh, here, I'm showing my age, a Joni Mitchell song about California, 1967, with apologies to those in law enforcement and so on. But there we go. August 8th, 22nd, 2015, had a total of 243 species overall. 42 were new to my USA ABA area lower 48 list, because that's all I had at the time. I hadn't been to Alaska. Of those 42, 38 were ones I'd never seen in the world, period. A total of 164 birds for my California list. And then my Life ABA lower 48 USA list reached 602 species. And then for the ABA USA year list, I crossed 400 for the first and so far only time, finishing that year at 436. The 400th bird was great gray owl, but it was a mere glimpse of one flying through the trees. This trip was with Victor Emmanuel Nature Tours, and we flew into San Francisco, the San Francisco airport, and had a little time to kill before the group all met up and everything. So I was out there actually with two other fellows that I know from the Howard County Bird Club. And so we birded around the grounds together and solo. And amongst the birds we could see just, on the hotel grounds were things like the Eurasian collared dove, which is of course not a native species. We had a white-tailed kite flitting around, which is a very nice bird to see anywhere. The next morning we set out, and our first stop was at Muir Woods, which is north of San Francisco, this being sort of the entrance, where we saw things like dark-eyed juncos, which look very different from our slate colored here. This arguably is like an Oregon or something like that. And the wren out there is the Pacific wren, not, it's the equivalent, or what on the East Coast we have the winter wren. Pacific wren is a little brown, stubby-tailed little fella, very musical and so forth, and very out of focus here. There's some big trees in Muir Woods. There I am with a little bit more hair than I have nowadays. And here we are sort of outside the woods in a more scrubby area looking around for birds at Muir Woods, where we encountered things like wren tit. Oops, excuse me. Went a little too fast there. And Bewick's wren. We went up the coast, Marin County. Why did that do that? Who knows? My mouse is being way too sensitive. We stopped at one park where we got to see Woodhouse's scrub jay. The what is it? What was that one? The one jay has been split into Woodhouses in California. Scrub jay. This is the duller of the two. This is the more inland one. And we'll stumble across the checkered skipper. I always like to take a picture of an interesting butterfly when I see one. And we went to Bolinas Lagoon, which had these cavorting seals. I think there might be a sea lion stuck in there too. This one, no, that's one of the seals, never mind. Where we enjoyed birds like Whimbrel on the left and long-billed curlew on the right. And actually behind the long-billed curlew is another Whimbrel. Notice the difference in the length of the bills. Whimbrels we see here in the east, the long-billed curlew would send everybody scurrying, I'm sure. Stopped at Bodega Bay, where we enjoyed brant, and we have some elegant terns on the left, and some ring-billed gulls, center and right. Bodega Bay is where Alfred Hitchcock filmed The Birds. And the motel we stayed in had a display case devoted to that. You'll notice on the right, they actually came out with a Tippi Hedren The Birds Barbie doll. Interesting, I thought. Further around Bodega Bay, things like common loons. Don't know why that's going backwards. Common murres. And then here we have a common loon in its breeding plumage as opposed to the other one, the non-breeding or basic plumage, alternate plumage here. The turnstones down there are black, or on the West Coast are black turnstones. They're pretty much all black on top, white underneath. American white pelicans are fairly abundant. We've got a couple of immature brown pelicans stuck in there, and it looks like a western gull or two in the foreground. There is a very dramatic coastline. On that left rock, you can see a few cormorants and it looks like a gull. Unlike the American oyster catcher on the West Coast, you have the black oyster catcher. The bills are pretty much the same. Anna's hummingbird we saw on a few occasions, this being a nice male that was coming to a feeder, just like you all had there at Lois's house. We were treated to some California quail up on a fence right next to the van. And there are a couple of different cormorants there. The pelagic cormorant, which is the smaller of the two, pretty much all black, dull bill. And the Brandt's cormorant that has sort of a pale chin with a blue at the base. It's the bigger of the two cormorants there. Pigeon guillemot is a common, is that an alcid? I think it is. Armis, do you know? Yeah, okay, yeah. Pigeon guillemot, one of the larger alcids. Brown pelicans are quite abundant along the coast. I don't know why my thing keeps going backwards on me. Here we have a mixed bag with brown pelican, some western gulls, and then a Heermann's gull right here in the center. There is currently an immature Heermann's gull in Hopewell, Virginia. Been there all winter, which there's an out-of-range bird for you, bird of the year. Just an overlook here with some beach seals and pelicans and yeah. Probably some other things too. I see a few gulls. I think we're still in Bodega Bay or in that area. Here we have a large group of marbled godwits. You'll see in here a few western willet, these pale gray fellas, but the vast majority of things here are marbled godwits. Here's one showing the bill. Here you can see an orange bill here. An elegant turn here. Hard to assess the gulls back there. The back's to us, and I can see the feet of some pelicans as well. And then here we have the bush tit, cute little fellows, very active, fun to see. We went inland towards Sacramento, and stopped off at Davis for some burrowing owls. And then we get to Sacramento. This is a western fence lizard. I don't recall precisely where that was, but pretty dry spot. We spent a lot of time in our guide's yard, who had interesting things coming like spotted towhee, California towhee. While we were in the Sacramento area, we went to something called the Yolo Bypass, which is a large low-lying area that's basically intended for water diversion when there's high water and so forth, but otherwise it's wildlife habitat. And it was home to things like this great horned owl, black-crowned night herons, yellow-headed blackbirds, and a very, very cooperative barn owl that was just right in the middle of the road and posed for us. And you have the white-faced ibis, this being a young one. Along the highways, sometimes in the agricultural fields, you can encounter some wildlife, some birds and stuff. Along one highway, we had a show of Swainson's hawks on the left and long-billed curlews on the right. Here again, a Swainson's hawk, some white-faced ibis, a great egret, and a snow egret on the right. Again, Swainson's hawk and long-billed curlews. I forget which wastewater treatment plant it was, but we went to a wastewater treatment plant. Burgers, we always go to the nicest places, pardon me. But there we were treated to Wilson's phalaropes. Here we are back at our host's yard or in his neighborhood. This is a fiery skipper, one of the more brightly colored skippers. We did a lot of driving around in Sacramento looking for the endemic yellow-billed cuckoo. This is a California Central Valley specialty. It only occurs in the Central Valley of California. You have the regular old magpie. I forget what the full name of that is off the top of my head. But unlike that one, it has a bright yellow bill and this yellow skin around the eye. Only can be seen in California. The next morning, we went to the American River, I believe it was, where we were treated to this beaver and ruffed-winged swallow. When you're out birding, you can see some of the most amazing things, to include flying pigs. This was in Sacramento. And here again, this is, I think, along the American or Russian River. This is a black phoebe. That's a common bird throughout the desert Southwest. And here, the western kingbird. And this is a white-throated swift going up into a hole at a highway underpass. It's really hard to recognize, but here you can see the underside of the bird. This is the wing, and so forth. I have one of the fellows on this, saw this picture and said I should do a presentation on unidentifiable bird pictures, and this would be the first one. This was his inspiration, if you will, for that. Here we have this is the black-tailed jackrabbit, I believe it is. And then in Cameron Park, the California was where we first encountered the California thrasher, which we came across at least twice on this trip. That's pretty much a California endemic bird. We went up into the mountains to a place called the Sierra Nevadas, a place called Wright's Lake, where we got to see this cute little squirrel, squirrel, which is called a chicory. And here we have a not well-centered shot of a red-breasted nuthatch, again at Wright's Lake. This is the Cassin's finch, which is, if you will, the Western equivalent or analog or something like that of the purple finch, but a good deal less red than our purple finch. Got the notched tail like a purple finch. One of the targets up there was the mountain quail, and the group pretty much went stomping through the woods looking for mountain quail and catching glimpses of them. But Bill, who is an 80-year-old gentleman, the oldest one in our group, decided to stay by the vans. He just didn't have the energy to go clomping through, and one came right up to him. This is Bill's picture, not mine. This is a mountain quail, very spectacular bird. Another place we stopped at was Luther Pass. Again, this is up in the Sierra Nevadas. And this is a sundew, one of those carnivorous plants that we We pulled out very tiny little plants. So it's obviously eating very small insects. And that was the place where we encountered the Hammond's flycatcher. This is one of those hard to distinguish or hard to identify or distinguish Empedonyx flycatchers. There's 7 or 8 of them, something like that. Here we only have to contend with the 4 or 5. But it called, and so we were able to peg it as the Hammond's. Interestingly enough, we have a record for Hammond's flycatcher here in Maryland. It was up north of Baltimore some years ago. That spot was also a place where we got to see the Williamson sapsucker, ash-throated flycatcher. And here we are overlooking Mono Lake, which is a big saline lake well in the interior of California. This was our first look at it from some distance. Not positive on this. This may be the yellow-backed fence lizard, but I'm still waiting for confirmation on that. How many years is it in? A neat spot that we had was called Tull House Spring, and we were perched on the side of a cliff that was all loose stone, et cetera, and one had to be very careful that you didn't go just sliding down it, but you were overlooking a bunch of trees where we were treated to things like, loggerhead shrike, Clark's nutcracker, Say's phoebe. It was just a parade going by us as we were perched on this cliffside. Black-headed grosbeak, broad-tailed hummingbird. When I looked through the scope of this bird, my first reaction was fox sparrow. Then I amended it to cactus wren. Then the guide said, no, it's a northern pygmy owl. So I think this speaks well to my bird identification skills. But yes, it is indeed an owl. Note the long tail here and everything. This was shot like digiscoped through a scope and all that sort of thing. So it's not the best shot in the world. And then we had Western tanager appear. Here's a nice male. Pinion jay. This is a pinion specialist throughout the West. Mountain chickadee. We were in a very dry place when we encountered this. I can't remember the specific location, but there was this really neat looking robber fly that I'm still waiting for an identification from. I've submitted it to both Bug Guide and iNaturalist, and so far haven't gotten past genus Ephyria. But that's one cool looking bug. And we went up to the White Mountains. Here we are looking at a pine cone from one of the bristlecone pines for which this particular area is protected. And there are lots of old, very craggy trees. There's one called Methuselah that's supposed to be 1,000 and maybe 40 years or something like that old. But they don't tell you where that is anymore because people come by and try and collect souvenirs from it and all that sort of thing. Lake Crowley was another stop, which had some sage thrashers. We got 3 in view here right now. A very bad photo of a sagebrush sparrow. It's a very dry location. And we ended up going to Bodie State Park, which is an old abandoned mining town where I saw my life not very well, a greater sage grouse. This here is the bird. This was the look we had. It was a quarter mile away. Pardon me. Not a spectacular look. Had much better looks in Colorado. Also in that area, there were lark sparrows, mountain bluebirds. This is a Bodie State Park. This is a very young mountain bluebird. Green-tailed towhee, You can see some green here. There's the tail there. Brewer's sparrow. At Bridgeport Reservoir, yet another place we stopped at, we were treated to Baird's sparrow. I obviously need an edit here. This is a Baird sandpiper. Sorry about that. Baird sandpiper does show up here in the east. If you find a good shorebird concentration, look amongst your peeps and look for a bigger one with a longer wings than tail, and you could be looking at a Baird's. You should get them in Pennsylvania. We get them here in Maryland. I saw my first forest fire while I was out there. This was one called, this is the first encounter with it. This was on the west side of Mono Lake. This was called the Walker Fire. And we got to Mono Lake, which was just awash with eared grebes. This one being in breeding plumage. There were also some American avocets there. Desert cottontail. Here you can see more. There's multiple eared grebes floating around out here, a few western gulls. Not sure about the shorebird there. Looks like a pretty long-billed one. Wonder if that might be a willet. Gonna have to zoom that picture and see if I can figure that out someday. This is one of the firefighting aircraft. They drop, you know, that flame retardant or sometimes water. And another view of the fire. We then drove across the Sierra Nevada to get down to the coast. This is a place called Donald Vista. It was fairly spectacular looking there. And while we stopped there, we were treated to an immature northern goshawk flying over. Oops. While we were there, we found this sheep stuck on the grillwork of the van. This is a western sheep moth, but a pretty spectacular moth. I'm not sure how long for this world it was. And then there were some nice fritillaries. This I believe is the Mormon, what is known as the Mormon fritillary. And we were just coming into Yosemite. This was at the town of El Portal, just right outside of Yosemite. And there, perched on the wall on the way to my room, was one of these little bats. The genus Myotis, M-Y-O-T-I-S. Don't have a species as yet on this, if indeed we ever will. In Yosemite, we saw things like white-headed woodpecker. This is a common California species. You'll see it, I've seen it up around Lake Tahoe and places like that, but it's a nice bird to see. The Williamson sapsucker again. The red, what is this, red-breasted sapsucker, I believe. And here's Yosemite Valley. It's just majestic, to say the least. This critter was also at our motel in El Portal. It's the five-spotted hawk moth. It was a really dramatic moth. And we had Savannah's hummingbirds flitting around. There were some feeders and flowers and so forth there at the motel. And here we have, what is that? That's El Capitan. And there's Half Dome. This is a lodgepole chipmunk, cute little fella. And here we have the yellow-bellied marmot looking very, very regal. I think this would serve well on the steps of the New York Public Library to replace the lions. I think it looks that majestic, but I digress. Whoops. This was sort of an amusing sign here, warning to hikers, the lightning-caused fire is burning along and near this trail. It is being managed for multiple objectives. So don't call it in and don't go in there. And here you have another view of Half Dome. And the lazy California ground squirrel, this was at the overlook to where we were looking at Half Dome, just having a yawn. As we poked around Yosemite, we came across brown creeper. Here is Bridal Veil Falls, which was just a trickle. When we saw it, it was so dry. Another Annis hummingbird. And then the Tuolumne, or however one pronounces that, grove of giant sequoias. There are some big trees, to say the least. Here we are clowning around. Joe and Jeff, two of my birding cronies here back in Maryland. House wren. McGilvray's warbler, the equivalent or the whatever of our morning warbler here in the east. And a male pileated woodpecker with a kind of a scruffy looking little crest there. And here's another Pacific wren. Up in the mountains, we went to another place called Shoes Ridge, where we encountered the California thrasher again. Here's one eating some nice berries. And the band-tailed pigeon, fairly common western bird. The oak titmouse, they're a little plainer than our tufted titmouse. And the oak and the, what's the other one? Well, we won't go into that. In a place called Garland Ranch Park, we encountered Black Phoebe, which we saw earlier. And here's the California scrub jay. This is a much classier looking bird, I think, than the Woodhouse's scrub jay. Or it's not dirty gray here, but white, and just a nicer looking bird, I think. This is a butterfly called the California sister. And we get down to the coast itself, to Moss Landing, where we encounter more long-billed curlew. And here we have several marbled godwits again. Western willet here amongst them. Sea otters, first time we encountered those. They're always fun to see. And a white-crowned sparrow. While we were there, we took a pelagic out of or into Monterey Bay, which was very fun. Here we have on the pelagic, I think we're on the pelagic now at this point, some California sea lions. A very poor picture of a surf bird along the shore as the boat goes by. Oops, going backwards again. Here we have three common mirrors. Make sure I didn't skip anything yet. We're out in Monterey Bay now. Rizzo's dolphin. And pink-footed shearwater. We saw several of these, and some of them gave some very good looks, like this bird. And here we have the black-footed albatross, I believe, with a pink-footed shearwater underneath. A close-up of the albatross. When I took this picture, I thought I was taking a picture of a dolphin. It was actually a porpoising sea lion. Some more dolphins. Here we have sooty shearwaters with probably a common mirror in the foreground. But the highlight arguably was breaching humpbacked whales. This is an awesome sight, period. It left me almost speechless. I mean, just seeing these things just coming out of the water and the splash they make and everything else is nothing short of awesome. And we enjoyed several breaches. Here we have the pelagic cormorant, and I'm going to guess that's a Brandt's above it since it looks so much larger. And this is the wandering tattler. again, we're still floating around in Monterey Harbor. And then we actually went up to Moss Landing from Monterey Harbor and back again. We went down to Carmel then, and we saw the mission and so forth, but there was a little wetland nearby that had some very obliging Sora, as well as Virginia Rail. This is the mission at Carmel. But we were headed down to Big Sur, where our target was the California Condor. And we went to a ranger station to get directions. Unfortunately, the director or the ranger that our guide had planned to get directions from wasn't there at the time. But while we were there, we had a couple soaring right overhead, which was nice to see. And there's my mouse. Okay. This is called, I believe, Sea Lion Rock, and it is a popular haul out place for the sea lions. And it is also a place where the California condors like to hang out, where they can dine on things like, dead babies and or the afterbirth of the sea lions and things like that. And it was there that we had one very obligingly fly in and land at fairly close range. We were very, very happy campers. And then to our amazement, the bird got up and flew and landed even closer to us. Indeed, it landed right next to Bill, the old fellow in our group, who had a lens that was like about this long and couldn't focus on it because it was too darn close. And we were joking, Bill, it thinks you're dead, because Bill was the oldest guy in the group, which wasn't very, very sensitive, I know. But in any case, wow, or if you think this is a wow view, how about this? I like to say that if California condors had nose hairs, you could see them in this photo. This thing was just a few yards away. It was fabulous, Okay, but enough of the condors. We subsequently went to the Moonglow Dairy. This is the go-to place for that other California Central Valley endemic, the tricolored blackbird, these being examples thereof. And here's a much closer look, somewhat reminiscent of our red-winged blackbird, but with a scaliness that they don't have. But I think once they're in full breeding plumage, they're all black like ours, and so on. But they have different songs and slightly different epaulets and what have you. And that was pretty much the end of the trip. Here we are at the water again with some pelicans, and I'm not sure what the heck that is. And I think with that, yes, I am done. So I'll be happy to entertain any questions. Everybody still awake?
Yep, that was